Thank you for tuning into this episode of the RAD Podcast. I am producer Brandon from the Rob, Anybody, and Dawn Show, and I am thrilled to introduce friend of the show and birthday girl, Lacey Nelson, to the podcast. In fact, she's taken over the reins. She's going to be the host.
Thank you, Brandon.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So what do we got going on today, Lacey?
So I'm honored to be here. Everyone, as you know, I've been setting this up for a while. Brandon is just the backbone of this project, and I'm so grateful to you. I have to say that on air for you. Thank you for doing this with me.
Absolutely.
So I created this model recently called Connect. Just your average word, Connect. Sitting around finding myself over the last, about 2 years ago is when I really started this journey. Finding myself so frustrated and upset with the direction the world was going, and finding myself saying all the time, they need to fix this. What are they doing? They need to fix this. And then kind of woke up one day and realized that I'm they. We're all they. So who am I waiting for? And it kind of set me on a new path. Probably anybody who's followed me on social media for a while could see that path sort of shift and change for me. So this model Connect really came from how do we continue to fix our world and bridge the gap and bring people together instead of all this division all the time. And Connect stands for communication, openness, neutrality, nurturing, education, courage, and transparency. Each one of the letters in the word connect is what we need to do in order to connect. So whether that's law enforcement and the community, or people, or different walks of life, different communities, ethnicities, careers, if we follow that model and each one of those words we both do, it can't be a one side of the coin or the other. We both have to do all of those things in order for us to come together. And it's going to take a lot of work and vulnerability to make those things happen. And, I'll be first to say that it wasn't until recently I started to really be that open and vulnerable self. That wall was thick, that brick wall everybody ran into when they tried to get to know me. I would say I know a lot of people, but not a lot of people know me. And that's a problem. That's a real problem. How can you make that connection with people if you don't live it and be it? So that is the direction of this podcast. And every time you tune into this podcast, we'll have another guest or guests that are coming to us with some real open and vulnerable and truths in their own lives. And sometimes it's going to be really deep, and you might need a tissue box. Other times we might have a good time and really just learn about other people that we may have never met before or know anything about. And so that's where we're going with this podcast. And so far, Brandon, every 2 weeks, we're going to do this.
Yeah. So
tune in, members.radradio.com. Pay for the subscription, you guys. I mean, if you haven't already, pay for that subscription, because you're going to be able to watch all of these podcasts as well as anything RAD Radio does. If you guys haven't followed RAD Radio, you're missing out. Some of the funniest people I've ever seen. As a matter of fact, I asked Brandon for some tissue to do this episode, and he brings us some toilet paper. So it tells me that there's not a whole lot of crying on your show.
Well, when we normally cry on this show, it's usually into our sleeves, or it's not that bad where we usually have a tissue box available. So I hope the toilet paper roll will suffice.
It'll work. Luckily, we have toilet paper now, so. Anyway, today, let's just get right into today's conversation. I am so honored to be here with a lifelong friend, Laura Didier. I have known the Didier family my entire life, and we lost touch over the years just because life goes that way. And only did we come back together because of today's conversation. I heard what happened and just had to reach back out to them, and I'm glad I did. And so we're going to talk to Laura today, as well as Angela Webb-Russell, who is a phenomenal woman herself, CEO of an organization called Arrive Alive California. I'm not going to say too much about it because I'm going to let her talk about it, but we're going to talk today about a young man, and we're going to try not to cry. His name is Zach Didier, and I'm going to show this picture on our camera here. Zach Didier is not your average kid, 17-year-old, Rockland, UCLA bound, probably any college you wanted to go to bound kid, who made a mistake. He made a mistake. When we were kids, and we talked about this before, our mistakes were, sneaking into our parents' whiskey cabinet or smoking a joint and grabbing a cigarette or whatever stupid stuff kids do, and we can look back and laugh at it and, be glad that we didn't mess up any bigger than that. Today's kids are making the same type of rebellious mistake, and it's killing them by the thousands. And Zach was one of those kids. So I'm going to let Laura talk about Zach, his life, what he was doing, and what happened on December 27th, 2020. Laura?
Thanks, Lacey. And I'm grateful that we've reconnected. I wish it hadn't been in this way. Your family's so special, to us, and you've been an incredible supporter throughout this whole tragedy. So thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to talk about it and continue educating our communities around this. So, as you mentioned, Zach was only 17. He was a high school senior at Whitney High School in Rockland. He was doing great. He was a straight A student. He starred in the school musical. He taught himself how to play piano. He played so beautifully. I have videos that I watch every day just to remind myself of how amazing of a person he was, and his spirit, still is. It was COVID lockdowns, and I knew, because he was he was just involved in everything. He was on the track team. He had a girlfriend, and they liked, going out and doing things. She was a sweetheart. And I thought, oh gosh, he's such an extrovert and he's out all the time. Just to kind of keep an eye on him, how he was doing. And he actually, all things considered, given it was his senior year, he really seemed to be handling all of those disappointments and frustrations as well as, one could hope. So he was really still doing well. And it was the holiday break of 2020. The first time I noticed anything that seemed a little off was on Christmas Day, on the 25th of December, and he just seemed more tired and kind of grumpy. But what teenager isn't tired and grumpy at some point,
right.
But because he usually had such a positive disposition, it kind of stood out to me a little bit. Even though Zach's dad and I are not married, we always did our Christmas mornings together. So I had come to the house, and we still had maintained our family house, and Chris and I would alternate time at the house just so the kids stayed in one location. So I came over, and Zach just seemed really tired, and I'm kind of asking Chris, did he sleep last night? Because the kids, with the lockdowns, were staying up late, playing video games. They couldn't get together in person, so they'd be on Minecraft. That's what he and his friends would play, and they'd build worlds, and they could communicate with each other. So he just kept saying, I just stayed up too late, Mom. I'm just tired. I'm like, okay. But I kept, through the day. Then the kids and I went over to my parents for dinner, and he just still didn't quite, come to his normal level of energy. So when they went back to their dad, I called Chris, and I said, just see what you think. He just still seems really tired. But all I could think, I knew nothing of fentanyl. I knew, I just thought he needs to get a better night's sleep. School's going to start back up, And so the next day I had to work. I was checking in with Chris through the day. Did he get a good night's sleep? He seemed better today. And Chris said, yeah, he seems better today, and fine. Well, then the next day on the 27th, I got a call from my daughter, and our older two kids were at the house with the lockdowns. And she said, Mom, you've got to get here right now. I was already planning to come later that day. She said, you need to get here right now. It's Zach. And she kind of let it slip that he was dead. But of course I started screaming, and so she kind of tried to, she knew I had to drive, so she was like, no, it's okay, Mom. They're working on Zach. Just get here right now. Just get here right now. But when I showed up, my stomach just sank because everybody was outside and, on the driveway. And I walked up, and Chris just said, our baby's gone. And he had found Zach in his bedroom. He just laid his head down on his computer keyboard and fell asleep. And, they ruled suicide out immediately. There was no evidence of self-harm. There were no drugs in his room. There was just no evidence of why he would be gone until the coroner came, to get him. And that was the first time I heard fentanyl, was when the coroner said, if we have to do an autopsy to rule out a heart attack or something natural, but we think we're going to find fentanyl. And I'm like, what the hell is fentanyl? How would my kid get it? What are you telling me right now? And that, we said goodbye to Zach at the house before they took him out. And, we had grief counselors at the house. They were amazing. The people from Placer County have been wonderful. And then we started doing our research, on what was going on. And in that process, of course, takes 5-6 weeks to get the toxicology report back. The other information, the health information, came back sooner, and they said he was healthy, So we decided we wanted to be public about this because the reason that Placer County suspected fentanyl was because in 2020 they were seeing this very sharp increase in fentanyl deaths from barely any in 2019 to 24 in 2020, and half of those were people under 25. And that's just shocking to be losing these young people, but like you say, aren't doing things any differently than the rest of us did growing up. It's just they can't counter fentanyl.
I'd like to point that out about Zach, and I'm going to let Angela talk about the differences between, we talked about this overdose, and I don't remember the terminology you used, but I'm going to let you go into that. But I'd like to mention that Zach wasn't a drug addict. Zach wasn't smoking weed. Zach wasn't drinking alcohol. Zach wasn't doing anything bad. And as a matter of fact, it was determined that this was the second time only within 48 hours that he took this pill. And I'd like you to mention, because, we've now discussed, Zach did die from fentanyl. How did he get it? Did he buy fentanyl? Was he buying fentanyl knowingly? And, where did he get this?
Sure. That's all very important distinctions, because he was not looking for fentanyl. And, he hadn't been battling any kind of a substance use disorder or anything like that. He was a typical high school senior. And we come to find out afterwards through the investigation that he was probably kind of bored and curious. He had just completed his UC applications. He was getting ready to submit his applications for the Ivy League schools, probably a little anxious. And so he connected with a seller on Snapchat to get what he thought was a prescription pain medication. This person was advertising, oxycodone, Percocet, things like that. And so that's what he thought he was getting. And so he had connected the first time with this person on December 24th. Probably that pill probably didn't have as much fentanyl. So what we were observing on Christmas was probably a little bit of withdrawal, and then, but I wouldn't have known that, he just looked tired, he just seemed tired, but not like, just not scary tired, just like any of us would have been if we'd stayed up all night playing video games.
Right.
So, and then he decided to try one more on the 26th, and that's the pill that ended his life.
Did he buy both pills at the same time, or did he buy one and then recontact the guy and go back and get another?
It sounds like there were two times that they connected.
And where did they meet?
One of the times was at Galleria Mall.
Okay. And so that was on film, I suspect. Yeah. Okay. So that's what also helped.
It did. Yeah. Fortunately, there was so much evidence on his phone, and his girlfriend knew the code, so she was able to get it unlocked the next day.
Good. So
that's where the majority of the evidence came from. And then, of course, subpoenas from Snapchat and the other digital evidence that they could put together. And so when our county decided there was enough evidence for an arrest, and he was charged with involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of selling to a minor, and as they were getting more information down the line, they were considering additional charges to include murder, but the defendant offered to plead no contest to the current the charges that were currently on file. And that's ultimately a decision for the district attorney's office, but they definitely consult the victim families to make sure it's something everybody's comfortable with, that it's lawful, that it reflects the evidence of the case, and that it's something that all parties are comfortable with. And we said that we were, because the thought of going through a murder trial or the thought of going through anything like that just sounded like an additional trauma,
right,
for all of us to go through. And so we're just sort of grateful to get this deal, and the way that the penalties add up, it actually kind of ironically adds up to 17 years.
So he got 17 years.
Yeah, and
for a
that's
17-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'd like to mention, I don't think it's common. People are getting convicted and getting sentences this, not harsh enough, but fairly harsh.
Yeah, it's very uncommon.
Right.
It's often there's not enough evidence to make that clear connection, but from the sale to the death.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because Placer was seeing this sharp rise, because Zach was your typical everyday kid, but mostly it was just because the evidence was there. Obviously, you can't create evidence out of thin air, as you know. So
yes.
If the evidence hadn't been there, we wouldn't be in this position.
So I'd like to be able to point out to parents out there, having your kids' passcode for their phone is so important. I can't stress this enough. Just being in law enforcement myself and being on different, whether it be a homicide or whatever the case may be, if the person has a phone with a lock on it, it's almost like pulling teeth to get into that phone to get evidence. And luckily, our cell phone companies are pretty strict with giving that information out, or opening phones. That's good for us, but also bad in these type of instances, because without Zach's girlfriend having known the passcode, there may have been no way to get in that phone almost ever.
Absolutely.
So, stressing to your kids, hey, I'm not going to go through your phone, but if something happens to you, I need to have access to your phone. Mm-hmm. So, write your passcode down somewhere and keep it safe. That way, as your mom and dad, I can have it if I need it. Let's hope that never gets to that. But without that passcode, we may have never been able to get that conviction.
Absolutely.
And the evidence.
And it's so hard to balance this. It's a natural part of raising kids that you give them more privacy and freedom as they earn it. And Zach had really earned it. I mean, he had demonstrated that he made good decisions. He was doing wonderfully, well in his life. And so, you expand those boundaries, because at some point they fly away, and you have to, give them that opportunity to, kind of make mistakes, learn, try things on. But what I didn't know was to have a conversation with Zach about, there are drug dealers on social media. They are targeting young people to groom them for addiction. They are selling things deceptively. You could encounter this substance that could kill you in minutes. I just didn't know any of that. I live, in a pretty, sleepy suburb, and this was not something that we had seen yet. It was, like I say, it was just starting, and I just really made, Chris and I jointly made that decision that we're going to share Zach's story. We're going to try to, if not end, at least reduce stigma. Mm-hmm. It's so easy to just, when you hear about a drug death, to think, oh, it's those people. Oh, it won't impact my family. We should have empathy anyway, even if it doesn't impact us directly. We should have empathy and try to do things to make situations better. Mm-hmm. But especially with the way it's happening now, it truly can affect every family.
It can, and it is. Just through you and the advocacy work I've done with you, I have a couple hundred parents and family members of fentanyl-related deaths on my Facebook page or social media, folks all over the country I've never met who are around the world educating because they lost their kids too. Mm-hmm. Alex, 14 years old, at a skate park. Somebody gave him I think it was an Oxy or something, and he was, 14 skateboarding. Let's try it, and killed him. And so it's like you said, it's not necessarily drug addict people. And here's the deal. If you're a drug addict, this is for you too.
Absolutely.
This isn't about putting you in a box and saying you're not worth it because you're worth it.
Yeah.
Having a lot of experience working with folks who have been addicted to different substances, I've watched many clean their acts up, get sober, get help, find their way,
And they're incredible people. Some
I mean,
of the biggest advocates that stands shoulder to shoulder with me are people in recovery.
Correct.
That feel they'll say to me, Laura, I had an thank God I wasn't using when this was everywhere, because I had an opportunity to get clean, and they have the most compassion and empathy and so many people that are in active addiction and struggling with substance use disorder, they're being robbed of a chance to get well.
Correct, because it's taken over.
Right.
What is it about fentanyl itself that is making it so that the reason why it's so rampant? Is it low cost?
It's cheap to make.
Is it cheap to make?
Oh, it's cheap to make, and it's not plant-based.
Okay.
So plant-based, there's a harvesting of the poppy and waiting for the seed and the labor and all that. That is not the case with fentanyl. It is chemical, it is synthetic, it is coming across, and with the pill presses that are available online to make, we're talking 10,000 in a day, and you sell them for $40 a pop. What's the scary thing is, and going back to what Lacey had just mentioned, is the difference between an addict or a substance abuse disorder versus the counterfeit pills, which killed Zach. He did not go to get high on fill-in-the-blank drug. He went for a pain medication, Percocet, Oxycontin. This is what the drug dealers today are going after our kids, and why it's so imperative that we're having this conversation, because they are specifically targeting our kids for the future, that potential of getting them hooked. However, there's no chemist, there's no regulation, there's no FDA, there's very little going on with a quality control. So 2 milligrams? 2 milligrams, we're talking 4 little pieces of salt, could kill you. That is a lethal dose. I'm a picture person. Let's put this in a picture. Your sweetener for your coffee, little pink package, blue package, that's 1 gram. Of fentanyl, that'll kill 500 people.
2 little grams of salt.
Exactly. That is a lethal dose.
It's unbelievable. And they're putting that in the fake pills.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you've got, I am going to get my thing together. It's my hair. The fact is it's cheap to make. And I've heard this. I don't understand. There's so much misconception going on out there of, I've heard if you touch it, you immediately die. That's a misconception. There's no scientific proof of that. All the way to you have addicts who that's their number one drug of choice versus the 2 grains of salt. It's a lethal dose. There's so much information for us to wrap our brain around, which I think that is why it's so important for us to be going and educating people on what this really looks like, the dynamic and how it is impacting us. But my core whole purpose in life is to get to the kids. As a parent. As a parent, you said, we had no idea. But to put it in perspective, this is a whole drug landscape that is new to the scene. The DEA in Arizona in 2015 had 0 fake pills.
0 in 2015.
0.
Fast forward 7 years.
Here we go. In 2021, same area, over 10 million pills.
And that's just what they confiscated.
And that's the thing, DEA. Am I spinning too much? The DEA made an announcement in December 2021 that it was 22,400,000 pills and 15,000 pounds of fentanyl was confiscated. What does that mean? Every American would die. That's enough lethal doses for every American to die. And the sad thing is, what's the statistics of what we're capturing over the border? 10%.
So there's 10 times more.
You got it.
Than what we're catching.
You got it.
And I'm just going to read some of these numbers, Angela, and I'm going to let you jump into it a little bit. You know, I'm kind of a statistics person, you know, just hearing, you know, okay, 2 grams of salt, that makes sense, you know, all these pills enough to kill Americans. Let's look at this one. In less than 5 months, fentanyl deaths in Sacramento County alone nearly doubled. Okay, and then that's 5 months. The crime lab's percentage of counterfeit pills containing fentanyl increased from 78%, which I'm sorry, that's a lot. So counterfeit pills are now 99% of the pills being sold on the street. So if you think you're buying a Percocet or a Xanax or an Oxy, it's now going to contain potentially a lethal dose of fentanyl.
Absolutely. Yeah. The DEA estimates in their seizures that of the counterfeit pills that they confiscate, that over 40% of them contain a potentially lethal dose. And I think the thing to also remember with this is that, you know, in the traditional drug landscape, like Angela said, it was plant-based. This is synthetic, so the supply is endless. And so in the traditional way of dealing with the drug crisis, when you talked about demand reduction, you know, that would be your, you know, educating people about the harms of marijuana or cocaine or that type of thing. The reason sometimes I hesitate to say demand reduction for what I'm doing with the educating kids, because they're not demanding fentanyl.
Right.
You know, who's demanding fentanyl? The dealers. The dealers, the people that are making these pills, because it's so cheap. It's printing money for them. So for me, I just want to fill in this information gap that my son fell into.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if he'd had that information, if I'd had it to give to him, he would have made a different choice. You know, he would have understood the real risk, you know, that was there. And I don't believe, and my grief sisters, that's what we call ourselves, you know, these moms who have lost kids to this and young adult, you know, children to this, just feel like, you know, for so many of them, if they had known what, you know, was out there and they weren't going to get the real thing, a different choice would have been.
Well, and I'd like to mention, and correct me if I'm wrong, not long after Zach died, you started speaking out about it, and wasn't there a friend that got a pill from the same person at the same time or something to that effect and ended up telling his mom?
You might be conflating a couple different stories there. The first time Zach did make a purchase, he was with a friend.
Okay.
And they each tried one and they were fine,
Okay.
you know. And then Zach decided to try one more, and that was the deadly pill. So that's like why I'm trying to tell people, you may not get red flags. You know, in the past, if your child got kind of off on the wrong path and an experimentation led to habitual use or dependency, you'd see, you know, the friend group change, the grades slipping, the personality changing, you know, all of that. I had one day of my kid looking tired.
That's it. You know, and we're not saying parents like jump on your kid when they're tired one day on holiday break, right? Don't freak them out necessarily, but ask the questions. You know, open the conversation. Hey, you're not in trouble, but did you take something that you're not supposed to? And let me tell you why. Listen to this podcast. Listen to this story about this young man. And because of you speaking out, I know kids have been saved, because I know you've told me that they've come forward to their parents. Hey, I was going to take this, but I didn't. So Angela, what are we doing here with Arrive Alive?
Oh my goodness. You know, I think my heart's passion is to get to the kids where they're at and in their language. You know, as my history unfolds, is as a crisis counselor, as I was telling you, I got to a point of being there as an expert in the aftermath of grief. And I was tired of showing up late on the job, because my heart's passion was prevention and getting
reaction.
to them. Yeah. And so I developed this model. I work with the district attorney's office. I work with the superior courts. I work with subject matter experts. And I bring and coordinate whatever topic is extremely important for these kids, and we bring it to these schools, middle school, high school, college. And the more research I started doing, I was meeting with the district attorney's office, and they said, we need a program and we need it now. And in 5 months, as you read the statistics, in 5 months, the numbers had doubled in Sacramento County alone. So I'm looking through DEA's report, and how are these drug dealers getting to our kids? Let's bring it down to reality. And it's alarming. So brace yourself. There is a specific organization, it's called S3, I'm going to plug them, S3 Research, that has started through a federal grant specifically to identify drug dealers online by removing illicit drugs. And they have reported there are 80 to 90,000 drug dealers online in the last 2 years. So where are our kids?
Social media.
You got it. The number one app they sell drugs is Snapchat. So TikTok, Instagram, Facebook Messenger. And we're not talking it's let's go down in a dark alley and meet with someone. No, we're meeting at the mall. They're doing home deliveries.
It's insane.
And that is why it is so important to have your child's passcode. In our home, having any kind of social media access is a privilege, not a right. And my job as mama is to protect you at all costs. And that is what that entails. You know, certain circumstances for certain families, I understand that. But these drug dealers are specifically targeting children, 12, 13, 14. Teenagers. And, you know, I always think, well, the scenario based of, look what 2020, not to keep going back to that, but look at that. We're still living in the ramifications of all the shutdowns, especially for teenagers. They were prescribed medication, going to doctors because of anxiety or depression or anything like this. Well, now the pharmaceuticals or the doctors are starting to pull back these medications. But what's happening? The drug dealers are on there. They literally have menus on these sites that you can access. You want a Percocet? You want an Adderall?
Like pictures of the pills?
Literal pictures.
Like a menu.
They also, visualize going to a diner and having a literal menu of drug you want. They also have a different aspect is the emojis. There's an emoji for every kind of drug out there. They go into QPRs, hashtags. There's so much activity. And these kids understand these are medications. These are prescriptions for what they thought. But they're not. These are counterfeit pills. So it's important for us to understand and draw a distinction between there is fentanyl poisoning and fentanyl overdoses.
So please explain this, because
that misconception again. There's so much out there. I mean, even the CDCR right now, their website has 2 different categories. So the numbers are skewed. They're always delayed. We're just not there yet in the technology round. So we're really playing catch up. But definitely understand a poisoning is based off deceit.
Okay.
These kids are going to buy in their minds, a prescription medication. Maybe they've had experience. Maybe their friends have given them, you know, something.
Something out of mom's cabinet or
something. Exactly. So in their mind, they are being deceived by these drug dealers because it's fentanyl that's killing them.
So they're being poisoned.
You got it.
Okay.
It's fentanyl poisoning.
So it's not an overdose in the terms of the definition.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's the organization that I've been working with is called Song for Charlie, songforcharlie.org. It was started by Charlie's parents who lost their son. Charlie was 22, high school senior, doing great. And one day he ordered up through a dealer operating on Snapchat a couple Xanax and a Percocet, and was waiting for a job interview at his fraternity house. And before that job interview, that one Percocet pill ended his life. And so Ed, Charlie's father, always does this great way to describe it. So if I went and got a large, bottle of Jack Daniels and I drank the whole thing, I would have overdosed on Jack Daniels, because the prescribed amount of that is a shot, and if I took the whole thing, that would be an overdose. But if I brought that same bottle home and I took the prescribed amount, one shot of it, and I died because it was actually brown water and cyanide, that would be a poisoning.
Right. So why are we looking at these pills, these deceitful pills, any different than that analogy?
Exactly.
If you buy a bottle of vodka, which I'm known to do, right? We all are.
Allegedly.
On a Friday night, right? On a Friday night, and that vodka has cyanide in it, why would anybody be looking at my death as, well, she shouldn't have been drinking vodka? You know, okay, buying vodka as an adult is legal. Buying a Percocet from a guy off Snapchat, not so great, not so legal. But it just stands to say that they're not buying fentanyl on purpose.
Exactly.
You know,
that's what the difference is. That's what, and even folks who get it through the tainted, you know, cocaine or heroin, if they're not looking for fentanyl, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
You know, because you're being deceived, and so whether you're a part of the substance use disorder, you know, community or inactive addiction, and you are poisoned, it's no different than, you know, these kids that are getting these deceitful counterfeit pills and dying. So I try to make sure when I share Zach's story that I'm not trying to imply that anyone's death is more tragic than another death.
Correct.
It's more that I want to use his story to illustrate why we all need to give a shit.
Right.
And
You
you're
know,
right.
because
Absolutely.
it can impact. I can say that, right?
Yes.
Okay, because it's prescription or it's the subscription radio.
Yes.
But I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat this. You
Right.
know, it's like we can talk in circles around it, and meantime, like there are, you know, a dozen more me's created every day. You know, we have to talk to each other. Like you said, the connect. I love that connect. We have to talk to each other about what's going on. We have to have empathy for each other. We, you know, I got, when we went public the first time with Brian Heap from KCRA, came and interviewed us because he really wanted to get this message out. I just kudos to him for reaching out to us and saying, I have a platform to get this out. My station supports it. We're going to do it. They ended up turning it into a 30-minute special report.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Good for them.
And Lacey, it was actually you. Like, I didn't even think about not looking at comments, but you wrote a supportive thing, and then you said, don't look at the comments.
Yeah.
So what the hell did I do?
You look at the
I
comments.
looked
Yeah.
at some of the I was like, what does she mean? And I looked at some of the comments, and this is not your fault.
Right,
I'm
right,
not,
right.
But I mean, I bawled that night. Like, oh my gosh, am I tarnishing my son's memory? Our people that don't know us have these horrible ideas about him and his dad and me. But I just, I mean, I've armored up. Like, you won't catch me crying about that bullshit anymore, because these people, they're not my audience.
Correct.
If that's the way they're going to look at it, they don't know me, they don't know my kid. I'm not going to let that stop me from sharing this message. And I'm at high schools, I'm at middle schools, I'm talking to kids because they need this information.
It's not their fault.
It could save their life. And if someone I've never met wants to say something bad, like,
Because they're ignorant.
Yeah. Well,
you
I
know?
hope their kids are listening to you
Right.
so that they don't end up in the same boat. I truly hope that's the case.
Yeah.
And if they're commenting, if they're taking a moment out of their life to comment, then they're looking and they're reading. And maybe even though they are that keyboard warrior name that, maybe
Yeah.
even though they're doing that, maybe they're later, hey, honey, are you playing on Snapchat? So even if they're saying all that, I'd like to think that you still got to them.
I hope so, because
You know.
I don't want their eyes to be opened by a tragedy in their
Right.
own family. You know, I don't wish bad on anybody. You know,
Yes.
I just want us to all, like you said, things are so divided and divisive, and I just want all of us talking to each other, because this is, like Angela said, this is a new crisis. This is nothing we've ever seen before in our country. And I shared with you guys earlier, a group of us, about 75 parents, grieving parents, were invited to the DEA headquarters in DC last month for their first annual, they plan to do it every year, family summit around this crisis. And it was wonderful. It was families from all across the country sharing our stories, all of us that are involved in advocacy in our own way, so we could learn from each other. And the DEA, top staff, from the administrator, Ann Milgram was there, Chief of Operations, Ray Donovan. They were super accessible to all of us. And they said, we all need to work together on this. But the thing that struck me the most, I was sharing this with you guys before, was, these are seasoned DEA people. And they're talking, I'm having one-on-one conversations with them, and they're like, this is even more than what my job is at DEA. this scares the hell out of me as a parent.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I can see that it could be any of our kids here too.
Yes, ma'am.
Because of the way it's being, being deceptively marketed, because of the mental health issues that are, tragically our young demographic is dealing with, and just heightened by the pandemic.
Right.
you know?
Exactly.
So we've been able to meet, and through my work with Song for Charlie, have gotten connected to, the ONDCP, the Office of National Drug Control Policy, that's headed up by the drug czar, and SAMHSA, which is mental health and substance abuse agency. So the right people are really
Getting involved.
Listening.
and getting involved. But the wheels of government, the wheels of law,
They're slow.
they're so slow. And in the meantime, we've got to do what we're doing.
And that you have hit it on the head. This is not, I think this is where you as the advocate, me and Lacey, as us as a community members coming together, because this is not a red issue. This is not a blue issue. This is a red, white, and blue issue.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
we have to come together to protect one another and our kids, because politics are so driven today, and this is where there's that delay. Well, we don't want to talk about where it's coming from. Is it China? Is it the southern border? Yeah, those are facts. Talk to the DEA. They've got it all for you. But it's so public, and they don't want to go there. So we have to, as community members.
Yeah,
It's a hard
exactly.
conversation,
It's
and we have to have it.
hard.
And that's why we're doing this.
Yes.
And like you said, there's no blame on this. This is not
No.
a one side of the coin issue or
No.
another. And I have said many times before, I think my slogan in entering the world of politics, if I choose to do that more so, is there are politicians, and then there are people who happen to work in politics. And us people, and there are many of them that I've met who have that title of politician, are just people who are working in the field of politics to make positive and good changes however they see fit. And if you're somebody out there that is not liking what's happening in our world, whatever that looks like, whether that's the right to equality or, recent things on the news that we've seen that aren't making people happy, and rights being taken away from folks, then get up, educate yourself, and come out here and do this with us. Run for something, stand with a sign somewhere, be respectful about it, but exercise your First Amendment right. I'm all about it. As law enforcement, I would stand next to you and protect you and make sure that you're protected in doing that, because that is your constitutional right, and I'm a patriot. Whether I agree with you or not, I don't care.
Exactly.
We don't have to agree on absolutely anything in order to be respectful and kind to each other. As a matter of fact, educate me. If I don't agree with you, tell me the reasons why you believe you feel this way, and I'll tell you why I feel this way. Maybe we can come to some middle ground. Maybe we can't. But at the end of the day, I'm going to shake your hand and say, go forth and conquer, and good luck. I support you, because if you have something that you're passionate about and that you're standing up to do to potentially help other people, good for you. Stop being jerks to each other. Get out here and talk to one another. Don't be so mean to each other on social media. Aside from this fentanyl issue where these kids are getting these pills because they need to relax, talk about these kids killing themselves because of social media bullying, and adults saying horrible things about them. Let's stop that stuff and try to come together. We're not going to fix the world. I'm not a bleeding heart liberal, so to speak. I hate that term because there's parts of me that are very liberal, but I'm not this person that thinks, the world's going to be rainbows and butterflies tomorrow as long as I start talking. It's not going to happen. There's always going to be crime. There's always going to be bad things and bad people and bad tragic situations. It's always going to happen, but why can't we try to come together to minimize that? At the very least, support one another through the tragedies.
And learn.
Correct. And to the naysayers out there who I get all the time, I get messages all the time. You're trying too hard, or you've made mistakes and you're not better than anyone else. And I get these messages, and you're absolutely correct. I have made a lot of mistakes, a lot. I've done things and supported people where I was absolutely wrong in supporting them. They've embarrassed me, and I've embarrassed myself. But I'm okay saying that. I'm accountable to my actions.
Right.
The things that I've said and done, I've made my mistakes. And now, instead of continuing to make those same mistakes, I'm going to come out here and try to make things better, and own my mistakes. I'm a human being just like anyone else, just like Zach, just like all these kids that are taking these pills, just like the people who are actually addicted to narcotics. I pray for you. I hope you can get some help. I hope that if you're using heroin and meth and fentanyl on a regular daily basis by choice, that you listen to this and realize that what you could use today could kill you. And most drug addicts that I encounter at my line of work don't want to die. They don't want to die. They hate what's happening to their life. They wish they could turn back the hands of time. And I always tell them, turn back the hands of time or not. Today, right now, is a new choice. You can still turn this around. You can be 50 years old and have been using for 30 years. Well, guess what? You're not dead yet.
Yeah.
So why not today be the day that you get clean and sober and come back and find me? And I've told people this on the street, get yourself 2 years clean and sober. Find me online and we'll do something together. We'll go speak together. We'll work together. We'll go back and talk at the jails to the inmates together. They're going to listen to you before they listen to me because I haven't been there. And that's why you've been there. You've been there. You guys have been there. So their parents are going to listen to you, Laura. That's why you're here.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to do. And, like you said, we all make mistakes. If living a mistake-free life was a prerequisite for speaking out, nobody could speak out.
Correct.
And we all have made mistakes, and hopefully we learn from them, we grow, we create empathy in ourselves for other people that we see that are struggling with things. It's a beautiful thing when learning and growing is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful part of our human experience.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
wish that my son would have, had an opportunity to have learned from this and moved on.
Instead
Fentanyl
of
robbed him of that, and that's why just the stakes are so high.
They are high.
In this realm, they're so high, and we just need to, like you were saying, talk with each other, not at each other.
That's right. We talk together, not at or down on one another. We're all humans, like I said. We're going to all make mistakes and mess up. Fantastic. So let's talk to each other about how not to do those same things, and just because I'm on this venture and we're on this venture together doesn't mean that we're not going to make a mistake today or tomorrow, because we're still people, so it's still going to happen. So stop being so mean to each other. Stop coming down on each other and saying these kids deserved it because they bought a pill, or it happened because they did this, or stop with that. You're not perfect either, so let's, like you said, talk together. I'd like to mention, Angela, before we're done with today, if schools would like your program to come in, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
This is a scenario-based education in the school. You did this with DUIs for a long time, and now that fentanyl has taken over.
Right. We're still doing the DUIs, but that's not the main focus at this point. Right now, it's the fentanyl with the district attorney's office. We're also working with the crime lab. So the kids are able to see a reality-based, evidence-based program that it's action-packed. We will take care of every fine detail, from hiring a visual crew to bringing in and coordinating all the subject matter experts from the district attorney's office, crime lab, law enforcement, drug recognition expert, a judge, and then a healthcare professional, a doctor, to come in and talk to these kids. And there is definitely a method behind the madness that we do. It's very fast-paced. But we can capture the tension of the kids. We're talking in their language. It's not a death by PowerPoint, right? And it's not a lecture. So these kids are learning about these different positions and about the subject.
Okay, fentanyl. So they could potentially say, oh my gosh, I didn't know that position existed in the world. I want to be this or that.
It's a twofold assembly, They're learning about professionals. They're learning about professions that they might not have been able to even fathom before. And all of the professionals and subject matter experts they know how to talk to kids.
Yes.
So that's great right there in and of itself. But they are bringing a message, a life-saving message of prevention, and getting them to think outside the box. And before I end with that, this is free for the schools. We will take care of all of the costs associated. There is no fee for the school. The biggest thing they have to worry about is, what's your date? Give me a date and I'll schedule it with everybody and handle everything.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because post-COVID, these kids want something to do. They want some type of entertainment.
Oh, goodness.
So this is like a Universal Studios exciting.
But it's real. It's not these fake, let's do a what if scenario here on the school. It's not. This is real life. And you know what? I think the kids and the generation these days, they want that. They don't want to have any kind of, is that really true what they're telling me here? Because you know what? They're just going to Google it.
Kids are smart.
They're smart. They don't want to be duped.
They're going to figure it out.
Exactly.
Angela, what
Yes,
area
sir.
of schools are you primarily working with?
Sacramento County is the heart right now. We'll go into, I won't turn down any school. You contact me. I'll give you my cell phone. You can contact me on my website. We will go to middle school, high school, colleges. We will do assemblies. We'll do classroom. We have 3 different formats. Live assembly. We actually have one on August 29th in Elk Grove at one of the high schools, and we're expecting 3,000 students. Parents are welcome. Wow. It is going to be powerful. Media will be out there, and that's the kickoff for this year.
We'll be there. I'll
Yes,
be there
you
with
will. Yes, you will. And so will Lara.
3 of us will be
You can
there.
see us again in action. And you know what? This is the kickoff. But if the school says, no, we just want a classroom version, working with Song for Charlie and using the material, we're all teaming up together because we know how powerful this is for these kids.
So it can go big, it can go small.
We can go big, we can go small.
Okay.
I'll do parent workshops. That's what I was going to end with is, you know, the parent workshops I've done in the past for other destructive measures to save these kids is my number one question is, what's our job as a parent is keep them alive until they're 25. 25. That is when the prefrontal cortex is fully developed. These kids, by science and nature, their brains are not fully developed. And the last part of their brain to be developed is reasoning. It's consequences. So as parents, it is our job to find out what's going on and to educate them over and over and over again. And right now, my goal is to get to the parents too, because a lot of these parents have no clue.
So that's
Just
what we're
like
going to do.
Myself.
Yes.
I had
We had no clue.
The fentanyl pills were new out here. You know, it was not something with the big awareness that we have now. You know, I try to remind people that when I lost Zach, when I Googled this stuff,
There wasn't much.
there wasn't much that
I
came
remember
up.
you and I
Right.
talking.
There just wasn't much that came up. Fortunately, I found out about Song for Charlie through watching the Today Show because we had just literally days before we'd gotten the toxicology confirmation. Chris and I had sat down. How do we want to go public with this? You know, we'll probably post something on Facebook. And I just happened to be watching the Today Show when Dr. Laura Berman and her family went public with their son's death. And then Ed and Mary from Song for Charlie were also interviewed on that as kind of subject matter experts since they had lost Charlie. I wrote that down. I wrote down Song for Charlie, and I told Chris, I said, that this is how I'm going to go public. I'm going to link this story because it describes exactly what happened to Zach. And I think Chris did the same thing and shared the story. And then through mutual friends, you know, this is one of the good things, you know, one of the
about
good
social
things about
positive,
social
right?
media
Yeah.
is because Charlie's dad, Ed, grew up in Davis. He went to Jesuit high school, actually. So we had mutual friends in this area. So at the I mean, this is a
Divine intervention.
divine thing. We feel like this is a Charlie and Zach thing. That I was literally on their contact page typing my story to Ed and Mary when my phone beeps, and they had found me on Facebook Messenger.
And they messaged you.
And it was literally the exact same second. And I messaged him back and I said, I can't believe you're messaging me right now. I'm on your website reaching out to you. He's like, do you have time for a phone call? I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
We were on the phone for like an hour that night getting, you know, and they really just kind of got me up to speed on what this problem is. Cause I'm like, I can't really find information on this.
And that was 2 years ago.
Like 18
And
months.
so
18
they-
months ago, and we couldn't find any information.
And now look at all
now
these stats.
look at the stats. Now look at where we're at.
And that's,
So,
that's
do me,
why
do
we
me a
do
favor.
this.
Yes.
What's your website?
www.arrivealiveca.com.
Okay, so I'll put that. We're going to link that, arrivealiveca.com. And you have stats on there. You have information on how to get a hold of you,
Yes.
your organization. If you are a member of a school, you run a school, you're part of a school,
You're
you
a
want
parent.
this.
You're a student.
Yeah,
It doesn't
Troop.
matter.
Scout
Yeah.
We're going to be at
Boys
Zach's
and
Scout
girls.
Troop next week.
Okay.
Church groups. I don't care.
So-
If you want a parent meeting, if you want it for the students, if you want it middle school, high school, college, it doesn't matter to get this information out. We are coming together as a community,
Yes.
and we'll go. If it's live, we'll do Zoom, we'll do virtual, we'll do classroom. However you want, we will get it done.
So we're going to do this. So arrivaliveca.com. Make sure you check that out. If you work for the state in some form or capacity and you understand state grants, or you have an opportunity for Angela to get a grant to continue this program, reach out to her as well. It's not cheap to run these programs in a school that large. Thousands of dollars to do a one-day program, and it's all free for the school. And so if you have
We're a
knowledge...
non-profit organization, 501(c). Yeah, so please, we'll do donations.
Yep. If
That
you're-
would be wonderful.
If you're blessed and wealthy and you want to pitch in some money to this organization to save our kids, let us know, and we'll make that happen. And just thank you. So, do we have a question?
Yeah, well, I was just going to point out how eye-opening it is that Snapchat is one of these primary sources for dealers to reach kids and ultimately deal. That was new knowledge to me. But Courtney just wrote in, and apparently this is a great thing what we're doing, because I think a lot of parents might not be aware of that either. But Courtney says that she says, "Thank you for doing this. I can't wait to share this with my stepdaughter when she gets back to us. She was dealing with dark depression and learned how to cut herself on TikTok at her mom's, which I don't allow her when she's with her dad and I. I keep up with her and what she's doing on the internet and YouTube and whatnot, and I found her searching how to kill herself, and then I found her cutting. Her dad and I got her the help she needed, and we helped her with what has caused her to feel the way she does. We allow her to feel her feelings towards her mom. And I'm so scared to allow her to be on social media and have a phone, but I'm the stepmom, even though I'm the one that raises her 85% of the time." And she goes on to say that there's other than being a helicopter parent and completely taking away technology, like what are some ways that some parents can keep tabs on this?
Being in law enforcement, talking to your kids and being transparent, like you said, these kids are listening to our honest truths. You can't beat around the bush with them. When I deal with kids at work, it's in your face truths. This is what the real world looks like. You want to be a big boy or a big girl, I'm going to treat you like one. And, if you want to have your phone, then you have to act mature and responsible, because having this phone isn't a right, it's a privilege. I pay for it. It belongs to me. I'm just letting you use it. So let's get that out on the table. And with that being said, my mom raised me, she grew up in the 70s, right? I love my mom. She's a hippie from the 70s, Love you, Mom. And the way that she raised me was all honest to God truths. This is what I did when I was a teenager. I almost died. I used drugs, and I want you to be better, and here is what's happening in the world. So as much as the conversation might be difficult, the birds and the bees and the drugs and all of this kind of stuff, having that real down-to-earth, honest conversation with your child and showing them things that are online, like the fentanyl stuff, people hurting themselves online. This is the reality. If you die, that's it. You don't come back. This is permanent. And just to Courtney, if you're going to show this video to your stepdaughter, first of all, being a step parent, I think, is pretty special, because you choose to love that child when you don't have to. So it's an important role. So don't discount that role in her life. 85% of the time, or 5, you choose to love her. And if she's listening, I have been there as a kid, suicidal, suffered with anxiety and depression, considered killing myself. My aunt committed suicide at 31 years old, shot herself because of depression. And young lady, if you're listening, you're worth it. You're beautiful. It brings a tear to my eye, because she's a kid. You're a kid, sweetheart. And life is there's so many amazing things out here in the world to do. And your depression for your whole life will run in waves like a roller coaster. So some days you'll feel great. Other days you won't. On those days when you're really, really dark, remember that the next day could be really bright. It could take 2 weeks to get to that bright place again, but you'll find it. And you need to find something that you love, that's important to you. For me, I play guitar, I sing, I do music. I go to the gym, that's fun for me. I play video games too, my PS4, and I just zone out the world. So sweetheart, whatever's important to you that you love, do that. Stop cutting yourself, because you're beautiful and you don't want to ruin your pretty skin. And if you ever want to come out and do some of these events with us, or you want to meet with me and see a patrol car or come see law enforcement or whatever, I'll take you personally. So, Courtney, thanks for the email. If you go to my Facebook, Lacey Nelson, or Instagram, or LaceyNelson.com, you can send me an email, Courtney, and you and I can connect on a personal level. Lacey at LaceyNelson.com is my email. Lacey with the E, Lacey at LaceyNelson.com. Send me an email, and we'll connect on a personal level. We'll talk to your stepdaughter. I'd love to meet her. So, again, ArriveAliveCA.com, Laura Didier on social media, and songforcharlie.org.
Yes, songforcharlie.org. Great resources
Yes,
on there that
yes.
are free as well. Great explainer videos. If you do nothing else, go to songforcharlie.org. Go under the video resources. There is a 4-minute video on this problem. Why the pills are everywhere, how our kids are being targeted, why it's such a deadly problem, and what we can do about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Find us on social media, folks. I just started my first TikTok. Lord save me. I still don't know what I'm doing.
You gave in.
I gave in to the TikTok.
She's going to be doing dances here soon.
Yeah,
Watch out.
Yeah, I'm going to do dances. I have no shame. If we're in Walmart together,
Hey.
I'm embarrassing you. So find us on social media. Send me a friend request or like the page. Follow the information. Folks, today is about Zach.
Yes.
I'm going to show you his picture one more time. This handsome
I have one too.
young man.
He's been, I don't know if that's the camera. Is that
Yep,
the camera?
you got it.
That's Zach today. We did that for you, Zach. For the hundreds of parents on my Facebook page and beyond in the country who have lost their beautiful children to this awful and deadly thing called fentanyl, or quite frankly, any other drug death. Even if your child or you suffers from drug addiction and you're using every day, please reach out, get some help, contact us. We're praying for you. We love you. We don't have to know you to love you. You're a human being and you need some help. And we've got your back. So get the help you need. And we can't wait to see you on the next podcast. August 5th is a Friday. It's 2 weeks from today, 11 a.m., same time, same place. You guys will not want to miss my next guest. She's an incredible leader in Sacramento County who's got some stories to tell about her time at as a deputy district attorney in Sacramento County. She's retired and ready to tell all. So I can't wait to bring her to you in 2 weeks. Again, thanks for tuning in. Connect with each other, talk to each other, and go forth and have a great day. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you, Lacey.